Donald Trump demonstrated that reality by forcing Benjamin Netanyahu, by way of Steve Witkoff, a fucking real estate developer, into signing off on a ceasefire. Okay? He did. He also simultaneously cut side deals, but that doesn't change the reality that he was like, all right, you're done. And guess what happened? Benjamin Netanyahu turned the dial down. Okay? All of this extra stuff that he's doing now is not the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu was on board with a ceasefire. No party involved thinks that this is a humanitarian way to deal with the problem. And Donald Trump has decided that this is the best possible way to market this decision to his fan base. Great stuff.
There's not a lot left to strike. It's a demolition site. The whole place is demolished. It's unsafe. It's unsanitary. It's not a place where people want to live.
Mr. President.
Nobody's got. They have no alternative but to go back. If we gave them an alternative of living in a beautiful open place with some.
Yeah, we heard this already. Okay.
Being built between Los Angeles and San Francisco. Project I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, he said he's going to look into the high-speed rail situation. He's going to look into it. There's obviously a lot of mismanagement on that part too. But having said that, and there's a lot of like shitty contractors that have made a lot of money off of it. But that's neither here nor there. Oh, Berlin police will ban the Arabic language of demonstrations after dubious reports of anti-Semitic chant went around X. Some SPD politicians want to ban all demonstrations entirely. And yeah, Trump wants to probe the California high-speed rail project. Trump signs orders on Iran and withdrawing U.S. from UN, Human Rights Council, and UNRWA. I think this is another lesson that I doubt liberals will learn from. But when you actually escalate, when you actually move in one direction, as the Democratic Party, the Republicans will take advantage of that situation and will absolutely push it even further, much, much further than you did. Okay, what about the norms, though? I think we're done with that. I think most people understand that it's over, right? It's over.
The worst. Billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars over budget. In fact, I read where you could take every single person that was going to go on the train and get the finest limousine service in the world and take them back and forth with limousines, and you'd have hundreds of billions of dollars left over. It is the worst thing, and we're going to start an investigation in that because it's not possible. I built for a living, and I built on time, on budget. It's impossible that something could cost that much. And now it's not even going to San Francisco, and it's not going to Los Angeles. They made it much shorter. So now it's at little places way away from San Francisco and way away from Los Angeles. No, we're going to start a big investigation on that because I've never seen anything like it. Nobody has ever.
Just name calling. Tell me how Harris would be worse than Trump. You can't. You just want to feel better about not voting. But guess what? You will never. You listen to charlatans and f***ed up. Honestly, Israel should be thanking you full stop. Bro, you helped Israel. Israel thanks leftists who didn't vote. Wait, dude, not only did I vote, I voted and urged others to vote on camera. Okay? Approximately for 45 entire minutes. This is what I'm saying. When you get all of your news and information from f***ing drama YouTubes, you're always going to be deluded. Okay? Just because it corresponds to your pre-existing biases doesn't mean it's true. Do you feel embarrassed now that you know the truth? Or will you double down? This is a learning opportunity for you. This is a moment where you can go, okay, maybe I was wrong about this. Okay? Maybe I was led astray. You helped Israel. Yeah, dude, I really, really helped Israel. The notion that the Democratic Party that held all the cards, okay, unilaterally on Israel and refused to put an end to these atrocities is correct. It's not a simple suspicion. Donald Trump demonstrated that reality by forcing Benjamin Netanyahu, by way of Steve Witkoff, a f***ing real estate developer, into signing off on a ceasefire. Okay? He did. He also simultaneously cut side deals, But that doesn't change the reality that he was like, all right, you're done. And guess what happened? Benjamin Netanyahu turned the dial down. Okay? All of this extra stuff that he's doing now is not the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu was on board with the ceasefire. The reason why he was on board with the ceasefire was because Donald Trump said so. That's the amount of power that the American government holds over Israel. And anyone that tries to tell you that that's not the case is lying to you. Okay? So if they had this level of power and this level of control and this level of influence over the state of Israel, okay, why didn't they use it when Israel was doing a genocide? Or, yeah, he's been saying over and over that you didn't vote and told people not to vote. Why? Because it sounds good for him and he can blame you for why Trump won. Yep, all down to you, apparently. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous because ironically enough, if the Democratic Party had listened to some of my concerns early on in the campaign from the DNC onward, when I was invited to the DNC, as a matter of fact, then they might have actually won the election. And it's ironic because the current head of the DNC heard some of those concerns on CNN when I was on CNN and said, I agree with Hasan. So what the are we talking about? What is, like, how can we as liberals and progressive minded people who despise Donald Trump, who despise reactionary politics, sit around and consistently shit on Republicans, understandably, okay, for living in an alternative dimension, and then demonstrate that exact same thing here on some petty drama bullshit? Like, you're literally doing the thing that you shit on the Republicans over. And you're doing it for, like, incredibly lower stakes. You're doing it over an exercise in petty internet drama geared up by your favorite content creator. Oh, wake up. Lock in, please.
Never seen anything like it. The worst overruns that there have ever been in the history of our country. And it wasn't even necessary. I would have said, you don't buy it. You take an airplane. It costs you $2. It costs you nothing. You take an airplane. But this got started. And if you have to, you drive. You can drive.
Are there other agencies?
They have hundreds of billions of dollars of cost overruns. And it's not even the same project. It's much shorter. It's way outside of San Francisco and way outside of Los Angeles. So we're going to be looking into this.
Mr. President,
those engineers that Elon Musk has helping him are as young as 19 years old.
That's good. They're very smart, though, Peter.
I see people in random TikTok comments saying how you could have changed the outcome for the election if you would have endorsed Kamala. And I'm like, are y'all okay? Taylor Swift didn't change it. What makes you think a streamer could have? They're just looking for, this is Russiagate, okay? But in a way, it's even dumber than Russiagate, much dumber than Russiagate, where it's like a streamer could change the outcome. Make no mistake, a streamer, myself, or anyone really, could change the outcome if the Democratic Party actually listened to not just me, but voters in general, okay? I don't want Donald Trump to win. You kind of did, though. No, dude, no. You're a 48-month subscriber. If you genuinely think that I am capable of changing the outcome of an entire election, you are fucking insane. For 48 months, you have literally not learned a single damn thing in here, okay? Oh, no, he's saying you kind of did. You did endorse. Yeah, I endorsed Donald Trump. I love Donald Trump. I want, and I said this on Pod Save America, okay? I said this on Pod Save America. I want to be regime pilled, okay? I want to be the greatest propaganda minister you've ever seen. But in order for me to be able to do that, the Democratic Party actually has to present something that is defensible, okay? That's it. That's it. That's the point. And it wouldn't even be up to me in that position. It would not be up to me, okay? Because if the Democratic Party actually changed its intentions and did not simply play the role of the controlled opposition party, okay? If they didn't do that, then they wouldn't need a propaganda minister such as myself because they would already be popular. It's that simple.
They're like you. They're very...
Has he...
I mean, look no further than what the Democrats are doing right now in terms of quote unquote resisting against Donald Trump. Think about that. What are they doing? Chuck Schumer the other day came out and was like, when they asked, like, what's the plan for the Democrats? What's the plan for the Democrats in terms of like fighting back against a lot of these things that Donald Trump is doing? And they just said, we're going to sit back and watch them fail. Great plan, man.
Any of these guys?
No, I haven't seen them. They work actually out of the White House. They're smart people, unlike what.
Yeah. The final 59-38 Senate tally to confirm Chris Wright as Energy Secretary is out. Here's who joined the Republicans in the vote: Bennett, Gallego, Heinrich, Hasan, Magnuson, Hickenlooper, Lujan, Shaheen. Fetterman abstained, Graham abstained, and Hyde-Smith abstained. He kept saying I was aroused. It made me uncomfortable. Schumer's fantasy scenario is not one where he and the Dems win. It's one where they die. We're not going to go after every single issue, Senator Chuck Schumer in New York, the minority leader, said in an interview. We're picking the most important fights and lying down on the train tracks on those fights.
It's a law that dictates.
Chris Murphy. You can always expect Chris Murphy to come out and pop off when it comes to
how U.S.
defending the State Department and coups and stuff. Chris, we tried to do a coup. We tried to do a soft coup in Venezuela, Murphy.
USAID spends money to make sure that we're countering Chinese influence inside Africa, to make sure that we don't lose access to critical mineral supplies, so that we're fighting back against Hezbollah in Lebanon. So Congress.
What they do in the control towers, where we need smart people, we should use some of them in the control towers where we were putting people that were actually intellectually deficient. That was one of the qualifications, is you could be intellectually deficient. No, we need smart people. Some are young and some are not young. Some are not young at all, but they found great things. Look at the list of things. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I'll read off a list of 15 or 20 things that they found inside of the USAID. It has to be corrupt. Nobody could approve that. They could only approve that if they were getting kickbacks. And you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
And it sounds like you're going to wind down USAID.
It sounds like it. I mean, I think so. Yeah.
So when that happens, which part of the government?
Well, I could see Marco Rubio being in charge, State Department, because they're giving money to. I mean, some of the money is well spent, I guess, but much of it is really fraudulent.
And on the education department, why nominate Linda McMahon to be the education department secretary if you're going to get rid of the education department?
Because I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job. I want her to put herself out of a job. Education department. So we're ranked number 40 out of 40 schools, right? We're ranked number 1 in cost per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. And we're ranked at the bottom of the list. We're ranked very badly. And what I want to do is let the states run schools. I believe strongly in school choice. But in addition to that, I want the states to run schools. And I want Linda to put herself out of a job.
Do you think that's something you can do with an executive branch of Congress?
Yeah, I would like to be able to. Look, if I could give the schools back to Iowa and Idaho and Indiana and all these places that run properly, there's many of them. I think.
Yeah, famously, red states have the highest, have the best educational outcomes. Famously, you know, like the Mississippis, the Alabamas. It's great.
So if you look at the list, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, believe it or not, China's doing very well on that list. A list of well-educated, you know, where they run their school system well.
Dude, I love that they always. This is somewhat new, especially from a Republican. Consistently pointing to, like pure public. Like a pure public structure. Oh, Hakeem Jeffries' 10-point plan. Okay, I'll look at it in a second. Like pointing to Norway and China or any number of different places and then being like, they're doing so well because they're not, because their educational outcomes are so much better than ours. It's true, right? And then trying to undermine public education or completely abolish it, basically, by destroying the federal structure and the funding mechanisms that already exist that are already being mismanaged through multiple decades of austerity and charter schools and privatization is insane. Okay? It's insane. And also, these countries that he's mentioning, whether it's like China, Japan, or Korea, or numerous other Asian countries specifically, when he talks about education, the reason why, especially China, is so good at education is because it's public and it's well funded and it's universalized. Okay. But there's also still tremendous negative qualities to that level of competitive education. I know this from my experiences growing up in Turkey, where Turkey also has a now limited, but somewhat decent, at least historically somewhat decent public education structure all the way up to college. Okay. And as long as you take the national tests, both moving from 8th grade into high school, where you take the first national test that you need to take, like a standardized test, and then moving on from high school to college, you take a second standardized test, you can get into the top institutions. The best education that you can get in Turkey, at least when I was growing up, was still in public schools. They were incredibly competitive. And that competition, of course, was still burdensome for young minds. Okay? It was still very difficult. So there are issues in these countries as well. There are issues in publicly funded education systems as well. The issues are the unimaginable amount of cramming that you need to do in terms of studies. You got to go to cram school, basically. You have to go to extra school after school and like specifically study for this test. There's so much stress involved in it. It's definitely not good for people's brains, especially when they're developing. They're under tremendous pressure, tremendous stress. And so there are issues in those structures as well. But the major reasons as to why they have significantly better educational outcomes than we do is because it's funded and it's public and it's not pay to win.
You have a lot of countries, not surprising names. I think that if you moved our schools...
Funding has nothing to do with how poorly educated the USA is, Law. No, brother. Funding absolutely has something to do with it. Yes, the cost per pupil is very high in the United States of America. This is true. It's a matter of where that money is going. It's a matter of the public-private partnership. And it's more so a matter of how those funds are utilized. A lot of those funds, since the 90s, by way of the Democrats and the Republicans alike, have been going to charter schools. The educational standards in the United States of America are piss poor. Schools also spend a shit ton of money on their sports programs before they spend it on actual education, having smaller classrooms, having better paid teachers with more time off, having more teachers, or even something as simple as food. Okay? The American education structure is so fundamentally broken, especially within the public education system. It's so messed up. You're basically you're braving the elements every step of the goddamn way. And there are things that people don't even comprehend that play a major role in students not getting quality education. Things like school lunches not being free. Okay? Things like not having proper air conditioning or proper heating inside of classrooms or the sizes of classrooms. These are massively consequential issues that we don't even address or think about. Okay? That's before we get to mass shootings and shit. Why China banned homework?
You wake up at 5:30 in the morning. You scarf down breakfast on the way to school. You do 30 minutes of mandatory military-style exercise. Then at 7 o'clock sharp, the real work begins. Chinese class, then English, math, and so on. You sit still, respond when asked questions, and quietly, obediently memorize character after character, fact after fact. Officially, school ends at 5:15 p.m. Plan on relaxing just yet. After an hour for dinner, 2 if you're lucky, it's time for the next phase of your day, private tutoring. You sit in a room not unlike the one you just...
Yeah, also, China literally banned, I think, this video is straight up completely false, Law. Didn't China recently ban private tutoring? I mean, you can still get it, but like a couple years ago, yeah, they banned it 4 years ago. I guess it's not so recent. I'm so glad that Massachusetts passed the millionaires class, so every kid, including mine, can have free lunches and breakfast every day. Yeah, that's a huge problem, dude. Like especially when you're growing up and you don't have access to food, that's genuinely consequential. Heating and cooling in classrooms not being adequate is a massive consequence to your learning experience. It's stupid shit like that. People think it's all because the teachers suck or whatever. Ironically enough, everybody I think knows that people don't get into teaching in this country because they want to make money. Okay? They get into teaching because that is their passion. That I think also creates a different issue. If you're a teacher and you're constantly burdened by the stress of your finances, you're also going to offer substandard education. It's normal. You're human. No matter how passionate you are, if you're constantly stressing about your finances, that's probably going to burden you. It's probably going to play a role as well. It's death by 1,000 cuts, where the entire system is designed to make these awful substandard outcomes in terms of educational attainment in this country. Okay? Yeah, the most popular television program, award-winning television program, is quite literally about a teacher, a chemistry teacher, that gets cancer and then becomes a fucking meth kingpin in this country. Okay? Unironically, in a social democracy, that premise doesn't exist. You get that? That premise doesn't exist at all, because in any other competent social democracy or any other competent government, the teacher has an issue with cancer, and then the cancer treatment is paid for. And we're over here talking about like, oh, look at Norway and China. Their education is so much better. Why can't we do this? That's why we need to continue accelerating the public-private partnership that guts public education.
To some of these states that are really well-run states, they would be as good as Denmark and Norway and Sweden and some of the other states. And then
what's the one thing about these countries that he's presenting? Okay? What's the one thing that you can point to in these nations, man? I can't seem to place my finger on it. No, it's not that they're white. He also talked about China too. No. It's not about white versus non-white, chatters. Get the fuck out of here. No, it's not low population. He mentioned China. China breaks all of these arguments. The notion of homogeny is such a stupid one, because cultural assimilation is complete by the third generation. Okay? The notion that this is like, oh, it's because we just have too many different cultures in America is stupid. No. Everybody becomes a goddamn American by the second generation, and they're completely American, hogified by the third. Okay? Stop with this nonsense. There are 40 recognized ethnic groups in China. People think it's one culture because no American ever learns about the country. Yeah. I was going to do Teach for America and wanted to teach at a public school, but ended up being railroaded into teaching a subject that I didn't want at a charter school with garbage work-life balance, no union, and super rigid rules for both teachers and students, so I ended up quitting. The incentives for people to go into teaching are so terrible that even people who want to teach are ultimately discouraged from doing so. Yep. This is awesome. They had a choice of to become a teacher or something else, ... How much is enough? Getting paid for working for 9 months out of the year, having a defined benefit, retirement, and full health care are all great. This guy coming in hot, dude. We're teaching. We're giving our teachers too much. That's a good take, man. You're right. Yeah. Well, don't worry. You know who are the real leeches on society? Our teachers and our fucking nurses, dude. The real leeches. The real parasites in contemporary American society. Classic.
you have the laggards, and you know who they are. I don't have to go to it, but you'd have the laggards, the same laggards that are...
Teachers are out here literally working 2 jobs, sometimes 3, in order to make ends meet. And this guy's like, you know, they're just getting paid too much. They already have good enough benefits, dude. Sweet here. Our school system is more municipal than state run. This was a change that happened in the 1990s. However, it's still all publicly funded. There are private schools, however, they're also paid for by the municipality and is allowed to make profit and not reinvested into the school. Yeah, except in Sweden, they tried to move into privatization, recognize that that actually led to worse educational attainment overall, worse educational outcomes overall, and quickly scrapped that idea. This happened, I think, like 2 decades ago at this point, or a decade ago. I remember reading about it. So Sweden is actually a very famous case study for trying to privatize it further and then realizing that that shit was a ginormous failure. It'll come back. It'll come back because that's how capital works. Capital, ironically, is a parasitic force. Capital, ironically, is, does all of the things that you think teachers are doing, I guess. Okay? So even if there is a privatization initiative and it fails once, that doesn't mean people who want to seek out profit in that sector are going to stop. They're not going to be like, all right, I guess we were wrong. Oops. My bad, That's not how this works at all. They're going to come back stronger, harder, and try to privatize again and again and again. As long as capital exists, they will always, as long as capitalism exists, there will always be capital owners that seek out profits in every socialized sector. That is ultimately the goal. Picking apart the government and picking apart state-funded institutions for scraps, privatizing it, and then turning it into for-profit institutions. Things like education should not be for-profit. Things like healthcare should not be for-profit. Okay? You don't have to be a socialist to recognize this. Things like housing should not be for-profit. That last part is the hardest one to get people to understand, unfortunately. Okay? I think, regardless of my worldview, these are areas of agreement with the overwhelming majority of Western society. Do you understand? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I have a different vision for how society must be run. Having said that, however, in the interim period, I'm perfectly capable of making marginal improvements. And those marginal improvements revolve around things like improving education. The exact opposite of what Trump is doing, of course, which is making education worse overall, because he's interested in one thing and one thing only, which is to create profits for his buddies, create avenues of profit for his buddies.
They're laggards with everything else, including crime. But even them, you'll break it into systems. As an example, if you went to New York, you go to Westchester County, you go to Dutchess County, you go to Suffolk and Long Island and Nassau and Long Island, you have maybe 6 or 7 locations, which would include the 5 boroughs. And
yeah, this is the famous Matt Damon clip.
In acting, there isn't job security, right? There's an incentive to work hard and be a better actor because you want to have a job. So why isn't it like that for teachers?
You think job insecurity is what makes me work hard?
Well, you have an incentive to work harder, but if there's job security...
Be an actor. It's not an incentive. That's the thing. See, you take this MBA-style thinking, right? It's the problem with ed policy right now. There's this intrinsically paternalistic view of problems that are much more complex than that. It's like saying a teacher is going to get lazy when they have tenure. A teacher wants to teach. I mean, why else would you take a shitty salary and really long hours and do that job unless you really love to do it?
Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
There are 10% that are bad, though. 10% of teachers are bad.
Where'd you get that number?
I don't know. 10% of people in any profession maybe should think of something else.
Well, okay, but I mean, maybe you're a shitty cameraman. I don't know.
Maybe you're a shitty cameraman. I don't know. Yeah. Guy immediately on the spot. Reason is a libertarian think tank, by the way, for those of you who don't know. But libertarian cameraman on the spot makes up a fact. Classic. Okay. And then, like, that fact is also completely irrelevant to the point of contention here. Okay. That fact is utterly irrelevant. What do you mean 10% of teachers are bad? Let's say 10% of teachers are bad. I don't even know what the standards are for bad, right? But does that mean that they should not be paid? Like, what are we talking about? Every goddamn person in this country is just like so predisposed with maxing out efficiency, not realizing that they themselves are also probably bad on certain aspects of their job. Working at a public school is so incredibly scary. I dealt with shooter threats at least once a month and had to do 4 different jobs on minimum wage. I was a substitute secretary and was therefore a nurse, a substitute detention teacher, receptionist, and crossing guard on minimum wage. There are so many things to do and you're paid barely enough to survive. Here in Denmark, we get paid to go to school when we turn 18, and the same on uni. We get even paid more money if we continue there. Like, I'm 20 and I have my own apartment, live alone, and have a cat and got no work. I can live like this because I get paid going to school. They're pooping on us. Okay, Denmark, watch out. We're coming for you anyway, okay? Don't worry. You'll get to experience that sweet, delicious American freedom soon, okay? This is unironically the American attitude, by the way, which is that they have nicer things than us because they have some degree of socialization, okay, and some social safety nets. So we must take that away by force. That's it. We're just gonna, our job here is to fuck everything up because we couldn't cut it. We couldn't be normal. Sounds like they need better propaganda.
I think even that would run much better than it does right now. Same thing with Los Angeles or California. You'd break it up into 6 or 7, but most of them would be states, and you'd have one. Like in Iowa, you give it to the state of Iowa. You give it to the state of Indiana. These are really well-run states. They don't have debt. They don't have problems. They don't have any crimes, relatively speaking, to speak of. And you would have education that would be the equivalent of Norway and Denmark and various other places that are at the top of the list. So we're at the bottom of the list and we're the most expensive. We're at the top of the list when it comes to cost per pupil. We spend more money per pupil than any other nation in the world, and yet we're rated number 40. The last ratings came out, you saw them. So they talk about 40 countries, we're rated number 40. And I say that if we did this, we would...
Dude, every problem in the United States of America is directly a consequence of, like, Republicans fucking it up and then Democrats not fixing it. And then going, you know what we need to do? More of the fucking up of the system. That'll fix it. It's insane. To the outsiders looking in, they're like, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we have a problem. I always use gun control as an argument here because it's like the most obvious one, right? It's such a funny, if not incredibly tragic, but at this point we're in gallows humor territory, so funny situation. It's like America is the only developed nation with a massive problem, gun violence, right? Massive. It's the only developed nation that has this issue, okay? And obviously, the reason why other countries don't have this issue is because guns are not readily available for purchase. Okay? They don't have more guns in circulation than they have people in other countries. Okay? And every single year, mass shootings increase, school shootings increase, they get more severe, they get more violent. Okay? And American leadership looks at that and goes, you know what would solve this problem? More guns. But it doesn't exist elsewhere to the same degree. So how can you look at that and be like, you know what's actually, you know what the solution to the problem is? The thing that's creating the problem and more of it. It's the same with our criminal justice system. We have an issue in the United States of America with recidivism, okay? The likelihood of a prisoner leaving prison, reoffending, and going back to prison. It's really high, okay? Now, other countries have lower rates of recidivism. Why do they have lower rates of recidivism? Well, it's because their prison structure is not focused on consistently keeping people locked up and in jail with no ways of reintegration into society. But Americans look at that problem in a country that houses a quarter of the entire planet's incarcerated population, despite only making up 4% of the entire planet's population. The United States of America, remember, houses a quarter of the entire prison population on the planet, okay? We are insanely insanely focused on draconian measures in terms of crime and punishment. And in that country, we look to this issue of recidivism, the likelihood for prisoners to reoffend once they're released into public, and we say, you know what the solution to that is? Lowering the crime rate? More of the same problem. More cruel prisons, larger prisons, privatized prisons. And the same is happening here in education. Other countries we look to have obviously a higher degree of socialization when it comes to their public education initiatives. They have better funding and a more efficient structure. They're not interested in eking out profits whichever way they can, or at least the regulatory structure has been able to push back on the profit-seeking mentality, right, by capital owners. And then we say, you know what the solution is? More privatization, more decentralization. It makes no sense. The entirety of the American political structure revolves around looking at an issue, looking at the problems that cause that issue to exist, and then saying the only solution is more of the problems that cause that issue to exist. It is crazy. We look at a fire and we go, you know what will fix this fire? More kerosene. That's it. That's the only method we have. And it's so insane.
We would go 20, 30 notches up. We could do great. And we would have some of the best districts in the world.
What are you looking to do?
I work in public transit advocacy. We can't invest more in public transport because the current system is shit. Read underfunded. Exactly. Oh, goddamn Ronald Reagan burning in hell right now. Okay. Starving the fucking beast, baby. It's funny because we do this to other countries by force through the IMF and World Bank, right? We give them loans that have horrible conditions with massive rates of interest. And then when we demand a return on that investment, we demand it by way of austerity. Here in the United States, we don't have the World Bank or the IMF. We just do it to ourselves. It's crazy. It's crazy. Socialists, classic socialists blaming everything on Reagan. No, I don't think this is entirely Reagan's fault, but he certainly supercharged it. I mean, I've routinely also criticized not just Ronald Reagan, but Carter as well. And I understand the problem is capitalism. It's just that Ronald Reagan is as close to a singular force of neoliberalism as you can get to. If your argument is that it's a far larger systemic issue than Ronald Reagan, I agree with you. I agree with you. But Ronald Reagan is as close to this issue as you can get, is the closest responsible party as you can blame a singular person. Is Reagan America's Thatcher? Yes. Related, democracy doesn't exist in the United States. Chris Hedges.
Do you have an executive order, sir, or do you need to work with Congress?
Well, there are some people that say I could. I think I'd work with Congress. I think we'd have to work with the teachers union because the teachers union is the only one that's opposed to it. Nobody else would want to hold them back. Look, we have to tell the teachers union, we're rated last in the world in education of the top 40. We're rated last. We were 38. Now we're 40. We went to 39. We went to 40. We're at 37. But we're at 40 now. The thing just came out.
I wonder why it got worse. You want your teachers to be well funded and not burdened by financial troubles, dude. You want them to have the best benefits. These are the guardians that are taking care of our children. These are the people that are shaping the next generation of Americans. They have a profoundly important job. I can't believe I have to sit here and say these things that should be the most obvious things on the planet, okay? It is alarming that I even have to make an argument for it, and yet I do consistently, and people still don't understand. They have a profoundly important duty, okay? What are we doing here? What are we doing?
So Biden, remember that.
Secretary Rubio announced a deal this week that would allow potentially America to be put in a different country. Is that something you're looking to do?
No, I didn't know that he had said yet, but if he did, it's fine, yeah. We have hard criminals, horrible people. You see him pushing people into subways. The train is coming last week.
In my experience, teachers just sit on their ass rather than teach effectively. It's one of the reasons for poor performance in children in school. Lack of interest comes from a lack of passion from teacher. I thought this community was older, man. I can't have this conversation with like mostly 14-year-olds. I'm sorry. It's just like, I know someone who's a cop. His dad got sick and they were deemed responsible for their dad and granted leave from the police force in order to act as a caregiver. It's been 2 years and he still gets paid. A teacher would have been fired. Yeah. Bro, you got 0.9 GPA high schoolers in your chat in general. Like there are many, I mean, judging passion is so stupid. I can't do this. Like, I don't know. I don't know what your individual experience is with your one teacher who's just not passionate. Okay. What I'm simply stating is if you want the best possible people for the job, okay, you're going to have to pay better. That's it. Everybody understands this. Everybody deep down inside understands this reality. All right. That's it. That's all I'm saying is you got to teach, you got to pay better. You got to make sure that teachers have better benefits and you will unironically have the next generation get better education overall. Okay. Not to say that like there aren't any bad teachers right now. It doesn't matter that there are bad teachers right now. Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't fucking matter at all. There are people who do a bad job in every profession. Okay.
Guy walking around and just sees somebody waiting for the train. Train's coming 40 miles an hour, and he gets pushed into the subway.
Also, the other part about this like subway murder stuff is like, put some gates on the subways, man. But that's socialism. That's communism. You know, can't do that. Hey guys, we can't actually put gates on the subways. We can't do that. Something that virtually exists in every country. Okay. Can't do that, okay? We have to abolish public transit instead. Public infrastructure is woke. If you want teachers to get paid better, then private education is the only option. Private education. No, I want the standard of benefits and job security to be raised. I want the standards and job security to be raised for public education to reach the level of private education. That's so stupid. You're literally not understanding the argument I'm making. The argument I'm making is that we have to make sure that public education is better overall. That's the whole point. Is too much government funding? Oh my God. Taxpayers shouldn't take that burden. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, well then you'll always sit around wondering why Norway has a better educational outcome than the United States of America, okay? You'll just consistently wonder why, oh why, do these other countries have significantly better educational outcomes in the United States of America? There you go. If you're asking me why that is the case, and I'm telling you why that is the case, and I'm telling you what the solution is, and you go and say, well, the solution is too costly for the taxpayer, then okay, so you just don't have any interest in fixing it. America's like a sinking ship, and there are just too many holes to plug. And a lot of the issues actually are related to one another. A lot of issues actually contribute to the broader problem in general. You try to plug one hole, there's another hole that pops up right above it. Try to plug that, there's a third. The entire mentality behind I'm not raising my taxes, fuck you, unironically also stems from the reality that no one believes that the government is ever going to do right by them. That's it. How do you think we got there? How do you think this attitude manifested? Do you see what I'm saying? We got here because of what I was describing. We got here where there's no confidence whatsoever in the government actually doing right by the population. So it's much easier to advocate for starving it further. If you don't believe the government is actually giving you anything, and most of that money is, in your mind, I don't know, going to fucking baby murder machines and subsidizing industries that don't even actually adjust prices in times of need for you, okay? Then yeah, you're like, why am I paying taxes anyway? That's why so many Americans are anti-tax in general. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but at least in other countries, in like competent social democracies, which are also being undermined by the same the same influence of capital, the parasitic leech nature of capital owners, okay? At least they have an understanding that like, oh, well, these taxes are going to social safety nets, and I think it's valuable to pay into it because who knows what might happen to me one day. And I would rather not be like America, okay? That's the way that they That's the way that people understand it. Hasan's tax evasion accountant. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 gifted subs. Show the Carmel High video to see what could be possible. Check my log. I've been spamming it. Okay, dude. Here, my tax evasion accountant wants me to desperately watch the Carmel High video for you guys.
Welcome to Carmel High School.
Yeah, I've shown this before. Here's Carmel High.
Join us on a tour. This is the auditorium.
This is the Commons.
This is the catwalk. This is the planetarium.
This is Senior Hallway. This is our Carmel High School library.
This is the Carmel Cafe and Market.
This is the auto shop.
This is the wood shop.
Main cafeteria.
This is our 3-story freshman center.
This is CHTV.
This is our live radio.
This is the yearbook room. This is the Carmel Varsity Gym.
This is the new addition to the Hall of Fame. This is the freshman gym. This is the weight room.
This is the wrestling room, baby.
Yeah, you want to know why it's like this? Because it's an incredibly wealthy neighborhood. Yeah, this is Indiana, and it's also located in one of the wealthiest cities in the country. It looks like this because of private donors, not because the Indiana public school system is thriving. I know. It's not just private donors, though. It's also because of the way that taxation works. If you live in a high-income neighborhood, then you're paying higher property taxes. And, well, I don't know how it works in Indiana, but that's how it is in LA, for example, in California. And the higher property taxes that you pay for immediately go back to funding these schools. And that creates a major issue with underfunded areas. The Chicago public school system is a glaringly obvious example of this, okay? One of the greatest examples of that wealth disparity. Illinois and the Chicago exurb suburbs have some decent schools, okay? The Chicago public school system, on the other hand, is awful. And the reason why it's awful is because, lo and behold, the overwhelming majority of black and brown students inside of the state of Illinois goes to the Chicago public school system, okay? And they're coming from very poor neighborhoods. Those very poor neighborhoods are not capable of funding the public school system. And a competent state government or a competent federal government is supposed to look at that disparity and say, we need to desperately fund these schools and fix them, okay? The Chicago public school system is in a dire state. Classrooms are ginormous. Teachers are having to teach 40 students at a time. That's impossible to contend with. Okay? Schools are also in desolate conditions too. Like straight up. They just look like schools from a dystopia, okay? They look like a zombie apocalypse hit it. And kids are still trying to go there. No after-school programs or very limited after-school programs. Okay? And then we wonder why kids that go through that structure don't actually, do anything positive. Bernie Sanders has talked about this with healthcare. There is an 8-year gap in like when people die in this country between the 1% and the rest of the country. Okay? On average, 8 years longer. It's almost a decade longer, man. That's a decade longer in life expectancy. Think about that disparity. It's insane. It's insane. Do you think it is a consequence of culture or racial superiority? Or do you think it's a consequence of wealth disparity? It's wealth disparity, by the way. That is the answer. I'm not even going to let you entertain the other stuff. Okay? It is always and forever and always will be wealth disparity. With Kennedy, they might not make it to 5 years old. Yeah, I mean, yes. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the great unifier, okay? He's the great equalizer where he will make it illegal to vaccinate your children and then you'll die regardless, okay? Everyone get cholera. Raw milk only, okay?
This is the blue and gold gym. This is the blue and gold track.
This is the field house.
This is the varsity tunnel. This is the bookstore.
This is one of the many cooking rooms at Carmel.
I just don't, like, Americans are so brain rotted by capitalism that they think, like, no, the only way we can reach this is through profiteering. through a profit incentivized structure. And it's so insane. They do this with like the US Postal Service too. It's like, no, man, it's not supposed to be for profit. You're fucking delusional. You are so goddamn stupid. Okay. Some things, can we just agree collectively? You don't have to be a card carrying Marxist Leninist. Okay. You can just agree that some things are not supposed to be for profit. Okay. Improving the quality of education for every single student, no matter which zip code they come from, no matter what finance they come from, is going to yield better outcomes for this fucking country. And I can't seemingly find people to understand this reality. I don't know how to explain it any further than I have. Okay? And if you make education a for-profit entity, then you arrive at this massive disparity. And then you sit around and you go, why is everyone so fucking stupid? Why is everyone devoid of critical thinking skills? How do we get here? I wonder how. Because it's a literal pipe dream? Yeah, it's a literal pipe dream. So what's the solution? Give everyone millions of dollars? Is that what I said? Wealth distribution doesn't have to happen at the individual level, man. Americans are so goddamn hyper individualistic. They can't even imagine like government programs. They think like, when I say wealth redistribution and improving the material conditions of all Americans across the board, they think, oh, just give me $10,000, please. That's not what I'm saying. I'm describing it in the process of schooling. Okay? Funding public education better is the solution. I am describing you the solution. You're just not hearing it. What do you mean? So what is the solution? That was my question. I've already given you the answer. You're just refusing to hear it. Anyway. It's not a pipe dream because it already exists in other countries, chatter. And of course, this is the part of the process where you say, well, Norway is homogenous. Or, and then I say China is not homogenous. And you say you don't know anything about China because you've only read like insane shit about how they're harvesting the organs of like children at schools or something. Okay. I've had this conversation a million times over. We can have it again if you want. Cultural homogeny has nothing to do with educational attainment, okay? There are plenty of diverse nations out there that yield more positive educational outcomes than the United States of America, Canada being a great example of this, as a matter of fact, okay? That's it. It's just money. The solution is just wealth disparity and fixing it, okay? Yeah, Cuba, another great example. Cuba is an incredibly poor nation and also not even remotely homogenous, very diverse nation, and yet they have tremendously better outcomes in educational attainment. It's not just money. It absolutely is. It's the most important part of the problem. It's the most significant part of the problem. And anyone that tells you that it's not is actually just directing your attention away, either because they're deluded. Oh, you can't just use money as a problem solver. Okay. The other route in this argument is, well, there's still going to be people that don't want to actually do good education, even if like the schools are better funded. Okay. And that's not how the government works. It's not about literally making sure by force every single individual is maxing out their potential, okay? It's about getting as many people as possible to max out their potential. And right now we're working in the opposite direction. I'm hoping for a reset, a cultural shift, a shift in attitude, a shift in government, okay? And yes, money is everything, especially in this process, especially when we're looking at an American school that is well-funded. But of course, for our ruling class, a well-educated proletariat is a genuine threat. Because if you're better educated, you're better equipped. I'll give you another example from immigration. Okay? ICE and that homunculus Thomas Homan has been chirping nonstop in general to mainstream outlets, right-wing mainstream resources, over and over again about how the radical in teaching undocumented immigrants how to avoid the authorities. And they're genuinely crying that the radical leftists and the Antifa are teaching undocumented migrants their rights. Okay? That's what they're upset about. Because they can't dominate them as hard as they want to when the people that they're trying to dominate, the people that they're trying to like break into the homes of, are well equipped with the limited amount of rights that they have in that process that the American government offers them. Isn't that crazy? Because they don't want you to be educated. That's it. Whether you're an undocumented migrant or a documented U.S. citizen, They just don't want you to be educated. They don't want you to be educated about your rights. They don't want you to be educated in general about what to do. They don't want you to exercise critical thinking skills. They don't want you to know that knowledge is power, not to, get all Sigma Grindset on your ass. They want you to be stupid, because a stupid population is servile. A stupid population can be used and abused. A stupid population looks at planes falling out of the fucking sky and thinks, oh, this has nothing to do with air traffic control being consistently underfunded and forcing like 8 dudes to sit in a tower and do the job of like 40, okay? That's probably not going to cause problems. You know what will cause the real problems? DEI. And if you're stupid, that shit hits hard as fuck. You're like, God damn, you're right. Them blacks are working in the air traffic control and they're disabled. And I think that's the reason why. And it has nothing to do with the fact that now we're forcing 6 guys to do the job of 40. And you can't even translate that to your own immediate circumstances too, because that kind of austerity and that kind of profit seeking exists in every sector. So whether you're working in construction, or whether you're working as a fucking nurse, or whether you're working as a goddamn teacher, or whether you're working in any sector whatsoever, you probably are experiencing that in your daily life. The fact that your boss has fired some of the workforce and is now making you do the work of others that used to do that. Your burden is higher now at your job place, okay, at your job site. And if you can understand that in your immediate life, how can you not figure out that there is literally that exact same problem that exists in all of these other sectors as well, whether it be ATC, air traffic control, or any number of different regulatory agencies? That's it. Yeah, I said job place. Shut up. Give me a goddamn break, okay? It's 8:22 here. I've been live. I've been up since 4 a.m. Please be kind to me. Here.
So here's what happened.
I will never forget that there is literally a HasanAbi head that moved to Finland because I did a Young Turks video back in the day about why Finland's education is the #1 on the planet. Okay. And a HasanAbi head, even back then, a decade ago, watched that video and went, I'm moving to Finland. And I remember because he sent me a Finnish flag in the P.O. box and was like, you changed my life. Because of you, I moved to Finland and I became a teacher in Finland. You seem to be getting leaner by the day. Too much sush. I'm not. I'm definitely getting fatter. I'm for sure getting fatter. I'm just wearing like a very big sweater, so it probably makes me look leaner. I've definitely gained some weight out here, even though I walk a lot. I probably am glowing though because I'm in Japan and I'm happy. That's what it is. Wealth equality is definitely a solution. So many problems at the public school level are disadvantages, but a huge problem too is the anti-education culture that's been growing. It's discouraging to hear students consistently push back on being taught because they don't see the benefits. Oh, I mean, sure, of course. But if you make education, if you make education better overall, you're still going to genuinely improve that culture surrounding education and the importance of it to begin with. Okay? It's a multifaceted problem. I did 11,670 steps yesterday, and I also burned 1,610 calories with a total of 4,197 calories overall. At a minimum, I'm doing like 7 to 10K steps every day out here. Crazy body dysmorphia? No, it's not body dysmorphia to say that I've definitely gained weight out here, chat. What are you talking about? It's just normal recognition. It's a recognition of facts here. Come on. Y'all crazy.
Finland's schools sucked on the level that ours suck on. When they tested the world's kids, both Finland and us were usually about the same, somewhere down the list of nations. But Finland didn't like that. So they tried some new ideas, and in no time, Finland shot to the top of the world. Their students were #1. How did they do that? That was the one question I wanted an answer to, and I went straight to see the enemy's Minister of Education. Before I could say anything, she blurted out their top secret.
They do not have homework.
Wait, so you reduced the homework you give them at school?
Yes. They should have more time to be kids, to be youngsters, to enjoy the life.
How many hours of homework did you get last night?
About 10 minutes or something.
10 minutes of homework.
10 minutes or 20 minutes.
20 minutes, but not 20 minutes. Yeah.
Well, if I would have done the homework, I think it would be like 10 minutes tops.
Usually I don't really do homework that much.
The whole term homework is kind of obsolete, I think. In that way, that
Your homework is obsolete.
yeah. In that way, that these kids, they have a lot other things to do after school.
Like what?
Like being together, like being with a family, like doing sports, like playing music, like reading.
So they have no homework. What if all they want to do is climb a tree?
They could climb a tree, yeah. They can climb a tree, then they learn how to climb a tree. But they'll end up, while climbing the tree, probably finding out about different insects, and they can come to school next day, tell me about what they found.
Compared to the older kids, how many hours a day do the younger ones go to school?
Mondays, 3 hours. Tuesdays, 4 hours. It varies. It's 20 hours a week.
So they're, oh man. Now, does this 3 or 4 hours at school include the lunch hour?
Yes.
How are they learning anything? How are you getting anything done?
Your brain has to relax every now and then. If you just constantly work, then you stop learning. And there's no use of doing that for a longer period of time.
Finland students have the shortest school days and the shortest school years in the entire Western world. They do better by going to school less. How many languages do you speak?
English, yeah. Swedish, Spanish.
Finnish and Swedish. Finnish, English and German.
French, German.
Finnish and English.
English, Swedish and French and Spanish.
So you were an exchange student in the U.S.?
Yeah.
When you got back here in school, what did you notice that you felt relieved about?
No more multiple choice exams.
No multiple choice exams here?
Or very few of them, if any.
Really?
All of my exams in the U.S.
How do you answer the question right if it isn't listed as one of the 4 choices?
You write your answer.
You have to know it, actually.
Yeah.
You actually have to know it.
Yeah.
If there was one thing I heard over and over again from the Finns, it was that America should stop teaching to a standardized test.
Get rid of those standardized tests.
National testing.
The standardized tests.
Standardized testings.
What you are teaching your students is to do well on those tests, and you're not really teaching them anything.
No, we are teaching them. We're teaching them how to flunk a test, and then a bunch of schools fail the test, and those schools are turned into charter schools, and then somebody makes a lot of money.
But school is about finding your happiness, finding finding a way to learn what makes you happy.
They figure now about 1/3 of the school time the students are in school is spent preparing for the standardized test. And so they've eliminated a lot of things that aren't on the test. So music is gone, art is gone, poetry is gone. Yeah, in many schools. Civics isn't even on the test. So now schools are dropping civics. Yes. Civics, American civics.
Okay. Unbelievable.
We got rid of poetry.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It's a waste of time. When are they ever going to learn? When are they ever going to speak as poets when they're adults? How does that help them get a job?
We try to teach them everything that they need so that they could actually use their brain as well as they can, including PE, including arts, including music, anything that can actually make brain work better. The children need to be baking.
I mean, this is just hyper focusing on like the different ways in which the Finnish education system works, but obviously it's not as comprehensive. There is some structural differences as well that I want to mention. I covered that extensively on my one YouTube video many years ago for the Young Turks. Let me see if I can find it after this.
Singing, they should be doing art and going on nature walks and doing all these things because there's this very short time that they're allowed to be children.
If you don't have standardized tests here in Finland, how do you know which schools are the best? And, people need a list.
The neighborhood school is the best school. It is not different than the school which can be, for example, situated in the town center, because all the schools in Finland, they are all equal.
When we move to a new city, we never ask where the best school is.
5 reasons why Finland is a global education leader. 2 million views August 15th, 2016. It's very cringe. I'm just going to give you guys a warning. It's incredibly cringe. I was so cringe back then. I mean, I still am cringe, and I'm certain that a decade at the stuff that I'm doing now and say I'm cringe as hell, but
It's never a question.
So nobody has to shop for schools.
There's nothing different in any of our schools. They are the same.
It is illegal in Finland to set up a school and charge tuition. That's why, for the most part, private schools don't exist. And what that means is that the rich parents have to make sure that the public schools are great.
that's a great take too. It's just like when you universalize these structures, then you're kind of forcing those with the most power and influence in society to also make sure that their children is getting the best quality education. If they sidestep that, okay, if they are able to sidestep that with wealth, then all of a sudden that wealth disparity allows them to turn a blind eye to how shitty schooling is in general. Okay, this is how it works, baby. Question mark. BS. East Asia exists. Sorry, this is not for everyone. In Finland, student is the best according to who? Nah, I don't think this is a good idea. Oh my lord. I love when you say East Asia exists, sorry, and then hail that as like the best possible outcomes in general when, you know, kids in Korea are like killing themselves over their 16-hour workday. Okay? That is one of the worst aspects of East Asian education. I already factored that into this conversation. Okay? I'm in Japan right now. They go to school 7 days a week, man. It's crazy. They go to school 7 days a week. It's insane. At least 6 days a week. But I've seen students in uniform on Sundays too. So I feel like they are also going to school on Sundays too. Twitch chat is just a never-ending hell of chatters being presented with facts and rejecting them with no reason. No, there is a reason. It's social conditioning. And secondly, that's why I think this medium is doing what I do, because this medium allows me to directly talk to people. You do something about the education issue, definitely don't worry about all the other projects to fund Americans, bro. I mean, education is just one aspect of it. I have poured hours and hours into all of the issues that face modern American society. Okay? This is just simply one aspect of it. But the problem is there are so many issues in every facet of existence in modern American society, every single one. And it's all multifaceted, and it's all designed in a way to slowly but surely give you worse results year in and year out. And if you actually succeed in spite of it all, you are an endlessly fortunate person. And there's unfortunately no simple solution to any of this, with one exception. You can make a systemic analysis and obviously point the finger at profit seeking. So you shouldn't school kids for college? Wait, what? In school in the East teaches more in Finland and help children in academia, so school shouldn't prepare you for academia. Cram school is not good. No, cram school is not good at all. Are you kidding me? I'm not saying you shouldn't be actually studying for entrance exams, or that like the standardized testing that exists in these countries are. I mean, I don't think the standardized testing structure that exists in these countries are the perfect solution. But I don't know what the best possible solution would look like. Having said that, however, I think we should, yes, absolutely make college much easier to get into. And also on top of that, make it free. Okay? If you can get a decent level of education, no matter which college you go to, and that is paid for. I was talking to a professor out here in Japan. Okay? And he was telling me how shocked he was. He's an American. How shocked he was that he's in this fucking college and his students, like, their dream is to become baggage carriers. These guys are getting a college education in a place where they have to pay for college, right? And their dream is to become baggage handlers. Okay? No, it's not Jeff. Stop saying Jeff. All right? He's not the only college professor I know out here. As you saw, there are also even HasanAbi heads that are college professors out here as well. There are many of you in this chat, despite my endless dunking on PhDs and saying that they're not real doctors. Seemingly, there are plenty of PhDs and plenty of professors that are in this community. Anyway, and are HasanAbi heads. And it's really interesting because for me, I was like, no, that's perfect. That means that these jobs that would often be overlooked in other countries are seen as like perfectly valid, well-paying jobs with decent benefits and security. That like you don't have to aspire to be an entrepreneur after college or anything like that. That you can just get a job and have that be your permanent, permanent comfort. Have that be your vessel for financial security for yourself and your family. And I think that mentality is unimaginable to the average American, where they're like, what the fuck? What do you mean? You want to be a baggage handler? Who cares? If it pays you well enough, plenty of people would do that job. You think people dream of working at the oil rigs? No. It's just that, especially if you live in Western Pennsylvania, where industry is left, your towns are now desolate with no opportunities whatsoever. It's the best paying job out there. That's it. So if baggage handling or working at a KFC or working at a McDonald's was actually enough for you to live comfortably, a lot more people be doing that job and be happy doing that job. Because for so many people, it's just about the dignity that you get from work, and it's just job security. It's just financial freedom in general. Nobody wakes up one day and thinks, oh, I want to be an oilman. I want to work at an oil rig. It's the best job possible. Nobody thinks that about working at the coal mines. Okay? It's just that those are historically, and even in contemporary society for oil rigs and whatnot, the jobs that pay the most. So if teaching also gave you the same level of benefits, to bring this conversation all the way back to education, if teaching gave you those benefits, if teaching gave you a decent salary where you can live comfortably and raise a family on one salary, we would have the best fucking teachers, okay? We would have the happiest teachers, and happier teachers that are well paid, that are not stressed by the regular burdens that they have to overcome on a daily basis right now, would actually create the better educated next generation that would carry the torch of American prosperity. That's it. You can also become a streamer and propagate terrorists. Seems to be working fine. Yes, you can also do that as well. Propagate terrorism, as in argue against the true terror that is the American military and the Israeli military. You know, you could do that as well. People like this will never actually understand that a better future is possible. Because if you think that the endless amount of money that we spend building weapons of war do not contribute to this problem, you're delusional. You are mistaken. You have been deluded, okay? Every dollar spent on a bomb could be spent on a teacher's salary. Every dollar spent on R&D for finding out new ways of lasering children from the sky could be spent on bricks, building houses, could be spent on concrete poured over a road, could be spent on hardening this infrastructure and improving and universalizing your fiber optic network to ensure that everyone has access to faster internet speeds. Every single dollar that we spend on our military industrial complex could be going back to improving American lives. Okay? Could be going back to research and development in medical technology. Says the Houthi promoter. It's not that deep, bro. You can't compare it to fucking oil rig workers. Wow, we just figured out basic economics. Great job. Says the Houthi promoter. If you don't support the Houthis, you are delusional. Good point and great take, Hasan Piker. I think one of the funniest parts about this kind of attitude is that it's mostly coming from liberals who genuinely think that they are intellectually superior to Republicans, not realizing that they're churning out the exact same kind of thought-terminating propaganda in here right now. You are no different to me than the average QAnon supporter. You understand? It's sad. We're talking about improving the lives of every American, yourself included, and you're like, oh, dude, you're a Houthi supporter. Why? Because the Yemeni administration under the Ansar Allah leadership is one of the few countries and one of the few groups in the region that said, hey, we're going to take matters into our own hands and we're actually going to implement a blockade on the Red Sea as long as the genocide in Gaza continues. And they stopped implementing that blockade once the genocide in Gaza at least took a ceasefire. They even released the hostages that they had over the Galaxy ship recently in the aftermath of the cessation of hostilities, at least in the interim period. Now, that's an additional point of pressure that they've launched. And regardless of my personal distaste or my personal opinion on their domestic affairs or whatever they believe internally, okay, that does not change the dynamic whatsoever with what they're doing in terms of the ongoing raping children. What the fuck? I don't know who you're talking to, chatter. You might be a little lost there, buddy. I don't know, man. Just because they do one good thing, does it make them good people and they're simultaneously doing 50 bad things? Wait, what? Just because they do one good thing? Dude, the argument is simple, okay? America, during World War II, was segregationist, homophobic, misogynistic, patriarchal society, okay? And yet, we still, and I myself included, cheer for easy company, okay? What? Do you want to know why? Because they were fighting against the Nazi scourge. That's it. And if you can make that calculation in your mind for America and the American military being on the right side of history, you can understand a very similar dynamic ever present in this conversation. That's it, okay? There's never been a moment where I've said, like, the Ansar Allah's banner is totally valid and awesome, okay? I have been critical. I have actually openly stated numerous times, of course, that anti-Semitism is completely unacceptable. Anti-Semitism also very much existed within the American military and the American government at the time, mind you, during World War II. But that doesn't stop me from looking at a situation like that and saying, hey, those boys, I salute them every day of the week, okay? And that's it. I love FDR. I talk about how America still relies on the New Deal. America still benefits from the New Deal's implementation, okay? Creating bountiful infrastructure where commerce could flow. FDR did a lot of good. You know what else he did? Internment camps for the Japanese. FDR also did a lot of bad for black people, cutting them out of the New Deal. And yet, I can still champion a lot of his policies, regardless of those other aspects. So many people like the one friend who's being too woke when it comes to this kind of analysis. Do you see what I'm saying? That's it. And applying this sort of nuance to the conversation should never be considered terrorism. Okay? That's it. It's just a way to say, shut the fuck up. Anyway, Hasan, your chat is so hostile. No one can ever learn. It's because you're spamming this. This is like not a productive thing to spam. So much so that Fossabot literally timed you out. And I'm untiming you out. And then Fossabot keeps timing you out because you keep spamming it over and over again. It doesn't seem like you're in here to learn anything. There's an argument that FDR's social democrat policies delayed the proper conditions for a true proletariat movement in America. Yes, that is the correct argument. Yes, social democracy is an extension. The welfare state is simply a lifeline for capitalism to continue. It's just, I'm outraged, now defend yourself. I know.